Welcome, chess family. We are going to learn how to play the pawn game. Okay, the pawn game just consists of pawns and no other pieces. Now the rules are simple. You want to get your pawn, if you're white, to black's back rank, which is the 8th rank. And if you're black, you want to get your pawns to white's back rank, which is the 1st rank. You see it's color coded. If you're successful in getting your pawn to your opponent's back rank, you would then say, "Queen, please," and you would take that pawn off the board and replace it with the queen. Put the queen on the very exact same spot your pawn was on, and that's how you win the game. Okay? So now if we look at this diagram, we'll see the two pawns are attacking each other. White is attacking the black pawn on e5, and the black pawn is attacking white's pawn on d4. Neither pawn is protected, so whoever go it is, they're going to win a pawn freely. So now if you want to protect your pawn, you see white will either have to move their pawn to c3 or e3, and that will be protecting the white pawn. And black will have to move either a pawn on d6 or f6, and that will be protecting black's pawn. So basically, you will have to form a pawn chain if you want to protect your pawns that's being attacked. So let us look at this diagram. White's first move was to d4. Now, if black decided to move to e5, he will be attacking white's pawn on d4. But the problem here is, then it's white's go, and white can just easily take the black pawn off the table and win the pawn. So as we see, 1 point for white. So if black wanted to attack white pawn on d4, it has to set up a pawn chain. So as you see in the diagram, the color square is f6. So black will have to first move to f6, not to e5, because e5 will not be protected. So black will have to first move to f6. So now, as you see, black has moved to f6. Now, if black moves its pawn to e5, that will be creating a pawn chain, and black's pawn will be protected or defended, as you can see in this diagram. And once again, this is called a pawn chain. Now, white pawn is not protected. So when your pawn is being attacked by your opponent and is not protected, the rule is capture. But let's say if white wanted to protect its pawn, then it would have to create a pawn chain of its own. So as you can see, white made the move to e3, creating a pawn chain, successfully defending. So here's the pawn chain, and look at black. Black also have a pawn chain. So your pawns are both being protected. Now, look at this one. So now we see that black is offering a pawn exchange to white pawn on h4. Black has a successful pawn chain. But if white was to take, so in this scenario, white should avoid the exchange and just move past the black pawn. Queen. Game is over.